Hello, everyone. Today on International Human Rights Day, commemorating the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations General Assembly, we welcome everyone to the 10th and final webinar in Humanity in Action Poland's series, 10 Stages, Human Rights from History to Action. And this webinar series has featured fantastic experts, academics, educators, advocates, and has been grounded in Professor Gregory Stanton's 10 Stages of Genocide framework. Throughout the series, we had the opportunity to exchange knowledge as well as share practical and actionable tips on how not to remain a bystander. And our sincere thanks go to Google Poland, whose support made this series possible. We are also grateful to Babka, HISTY, and NGO PL for granting their patronage. And this webinar series is directly connected to HIA Poland's 10 Stages educational mobile app, the first of its kind, available for free in 3 languages, Polish, German, and English. Along with the accompanying website. And the creation of the app was made possible thanks to the support of the Foundation Remembrance, Responsibility and Future, the EVZ Foundation. Today we will discuss denial, which in Professor Stanton's framework constitutes the 10th and final stage. And we will also explore how our mobile app and historical and human rights education more broadly can be designed in ways that translate into real-life action in line with the values that were underpinning and are underpinning the already mentioned Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And today we have a fantastic panel of experts and practitioners, which include the initiator and creator of the 10 Stages app, Monika Mazur-Rafał, and its co-creators, Larysa Michalska and Dr. Tomasz Cebulski. And before we dive into the questions, let me introduce our speakers. Dr. Tomasz Cebulski is an academic genealogist. How do you pronounce that word? That's really hard. I already need your help. And a guide specializing in Holocaust studies and memory politics. And importantly, his doctoral research analyzed the evolving patterns of Holocaust as well as Auschwitz remembrance. Tomek is an author of Auschwitz After Auschwitz and a scholar in comparative genocide studies, focusing on how societies construct, negotiate, as well as interpret traumatic past. In 2000, he founded Polin Travel, which is a research and travel company, integrating his work in Jewish history, heritage interpretation, and during COVID-19 pandemic, he established a Sky Heritage Pictures, a visual history initiative, which is dedicated to documenting and interpreting historical sites through air images. Our next speaker is Larysa Michalska, who is an educator and activist deeply engaged in issues of diversity, multiculturalism, and difficult memory. She holds degrees in religious studies, Jewish studies, as well as social change management from the Jagiellonian University. And we had a pleasure to work with Larysa for 4 years. And now she serves as the head of the Upper Silesian Jews House of Remembrance. She's also the co-founder and leader of the Max Kopfstein Association, through which she implemented numerous cultural and educational projects in collaboration with Polish and international institutions, as well as NGOs. And her work focuses on identity, Jewish history, culture, and cultural heritage. Welcome, Larysa.
Nice to be here.
And as for Monika Mazur-Rafał, she's an experienced NGO executive, educator, and mentor. She studied in Poland, Germany, France, and Spain. She holds master's degrees in international relations, European integration, as well as executive MBA. She's also the creator of the award-winning Humanity in Action Poland Foundation, where she serves as president of the management board. She also has extensive experience in designing and implementing innovative training programs, masterclass fellowships, and educational tools. And Monika is committed to maximizing impact by designing and facilitating cross-sector and international cooperation among diverse stakeholders. Monika is also the author of various publications and strategic action frameworks at the intersections of human rights and history. So, when talking about the 10 Stages app, I'd suggest we start at the beginning. So with the person who came up with the idea to create this new tool. So I'm turning to Monika now. And my first question to you is, given your longstanding experience in non-formal education, your work supporting activists and your drive for innovation, how actually this idea for the app emerged, especially considering that in our so-called third sector, initiatives of that type might seem, very ambitious due to the effort and resources required.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, and thank you for your kind introduction. Well, everything I do professionally lives somewhere between historical education and human rights. But what really drives me is one simple question. How do we make difficult history speak to present in a way that really people actually can feel? And this framework actually was really helpful in developing the very project idea. So imagine, this was the project that was born during the pandemic. We were all, as you well remember, we were all locked behind screens. Schools, museums, memory sites, everything was closed. And at the same time, in Poland, another intense election campaign was starting with a visible rise in hate speech, especially against LGBTQ plus people. And I remember thinking, this is exactly the moment when people need interesting tools. And we didn't have anything like that. So then I asked myself, what could we actually do right now? Something simple, something intuitive, something that any young person could access with just a phone or with internet access. And this is when the idea of the app appeared. And from the perspective of human rights educational organization, this was a quite risky choice because the history itself is complex, the topic is quite sensitive, and also building an app is not a small thing for an organization as ours. But what really mattered for me at that time was the message that hate speech never appears out of nowhere, and that it is always part of a longer, dangerous process. And this is why we have chosen Gregory Stanton's theory to become our backbone, and just to enable our learners, potential learners, to see some patterns and not just isolated events. But at that time, what really gave me real confidence were the people who joined this idea very early. So first of all, you, Magda, you reacted with enthusiasm to this idea, with curiosity. Then it was really great that Dr. Tomasz Cebulski, Tomek, was open to join us and brought incredible depth of knowledge and helping all of us to create the content, texts, gathering documents, video materials. Later, Larysa Michalska, historian with a vast experience working with teachers, helped to really develop a strong content educationally and led the entire testing process. So, and last but not least, also our colleagues from Humanity in Action in Germany and the United States helped us to shape strong international language versions. So it was truly a collective effort, and I am really grateful for that. At that moment, I knew one thing. This app cannot tell the only one version of history. Not just, heroic stories, the history we see in manuals, school manuals. I wanted it to include minorities, women, bystanders, upstanders, ordinary people facing impossible choices. A version of history that is complex, sometimes uncomfortable, and by this fact, also much closer to real life. And I also didn't want to be a closed project. We designed it from the very beginning as a participatory space. People could submit the stories of upstanders. People could vote on them and decide which voices should be heard. And we also tested a lot our work and listened to the people. So for instance, when teachers told us, we need a website too, not only an app, we actually were able to adapt to their need, to make their work easier at schools. And now when we still receive some feedback, people appreciate that they can connect with some stories, with part of the stories. It really does evoke interest in local history, in family histories, and they even keep sending us some stories. So it seems that what they also appreciate is that they are not passive learners. There is space for them to question, to respond, to really experience history in a more active way. So at the end, I would close to open up the space for all of you. This app is not really about the past. It's about whose stories we choose to remember today, and what kind of society that choice help us to build.
Thank you, Monika. And Tomek, as Monika already mentioned, you, together with Monika and Larysa, you were part of the core team conceptualizing and developing the 10 Stages app. And I'm interested, like from your perspective as a historian, specializing, among other areas in politics of memory, as well as, you have extensive experience as state guide at, for instance, the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. Which stage or stages have you found the most difficult to convey to people, and why?
Thank you very much for having me from the very beginning, actually. So thank you very much, Monika and Magda, for inviting me to this project. It felt like very deep waters when we started to talk, but we not only managed to swim, but I think we're swimming pretty beautifully, because 5 years later, we are actually talking about this app and my students are using it. So it's a product, educational product, which is there on the market, active. Coming back to stages, of course, there are 10 stages. I think the first two were the hardest to be communicated. Actually, I encourage all of you to have the app opened right now. It's very easy to download 10 stages, and you can flick through the app and see how is it looking like. It's very easy to operate.
Oh, you said first and second, so people
The
can know the
first
classification and
is
symbolization.
classification and symbolization, exactly. Why they were the hardest? Because they were the most obvious. We actually framed as creatures in order to classify and symbolize on a daily basis. This is how our brain works. And putting those two categories in a platform or in a conversation about genocide and explaining it to the people that such a basic daily brain function may if it's not restrained, if it's not controlled, if it's not tempered somehow, may lead to a genocide, is actually very hard to accommodate. Especially, let's say it was 5 years ago when the world was in a different place than we are today, when radicalization around us was not yet as advanced as we see it today. Unfortunately, to a certain degree, we are right now living on a daily basis those first 2 or 3 stages, and they are pretty much with us on a daily basis in political speeches, for example. So how to explain to a student, because the app was meant for the students, that actually, if it's not controlled, it may take you very fast to another stages, to the stages of discrimination, dehumanization, organization, and so on. So those were probably the harshest to be communicated properly. And we had to think intensively about who to put to represent those stages. And in classification, we decided for Ernst Butzky, a regular man, a regular fellow who is a man of bone and flesh like we are, and he's been framed by the political ideology into being an enemy of a nation all of a sudden. And the entire system is kind of closing on him very fast. He started trying to fight against the system, but the machine is overwhelming. He's fighting with the system for about 4 years before the system is actually murdering him in the end. So I think it's a very good choice to show how easily this early classification may gradually evolve into every next stage along the way. When it comes to symbolization, of course, this is kind of an obvious stage of marking people who are targeted with actually a very physical marker. And we decided here to feature Shmuel Ziegelboim in a kind of a reverse thinking, not to show somebody who was stigmatized and marked, but rather to show somebody who proactively took a position against it. So somebody who from day one was communicating that if we agree into this symbolization, if we agree to this stigmatization, we'll need to agree to every next stage that follows. So those were the 2 harshest stages. If I may mention one more, stage number 5, organization. Every genocide is organized, usually organized by the state. There's a tremendous, again, machinery behind it, usually bureaucracy. And here we again decided for a personality who decided to stand against, decided to oppose this entire organized machinery of crime. And that was obviously Rosa Robota, as a Jewish girl from northern Poland who was deported to Auschwitz. And in spite and against all of the gruesome Birkenau reality, she's engaged into the underground system and successfully manages to facilitate the later revolt of the Sonderkommando in October 44 at Birkenau. So we actually decided to show a person who is standing against this organized machinery, which is overwhelming, especially when you think in terms of Auschwitz as an overwhelming system of breaking human lives and murdering people in the end. So those were the probably 3 harsher stages to be communicated, but I think we succeeded. So.
Thank you, Tomek. And you mentioned Ernst Butzky, and for those interested in his life, as well as how his example connects with the history of extermination of people with disabilities, who are also mentioned in the app, we highly encourage you to listen to the 9th webinar in our series, where Dr. Katarzyna Ojrzyńska in depth discusses the T4 action, for instance, as well as we mentioned Ernst Butzky. And Larysa, You have a long-standing expertise in educating educators in both the non-formal and formal settings. And drawing on that experience, what challenge do you see in education for memory, commemoration, and difficult history? What is like a recurring problem? And how does the 10 Stages Up, would you say, tries to attempt to address it?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And it's a bit strange feeling to be on the other side, because usually I was asking the questions, as I'm now challenged to answer. It's a very good and difficult and complex question, I would say, because there are many challenges in this type of education. And since I'm working with teachers, educators, but also sometimes with the students, I see that there are different problems in different, let's say, age groups or professional groups. So one of the problems is that it's a challenge for many teachers to kind of change the mindset a bit, and also trust tools like the apps still, because it's still for many of them something new. Some of them don't feel comfortable using the app, and they have these prejudices that it's not, valuable knowledge. It's something easy, something what the teenagers are using, something maybe what you cannot trust, something which doesn't present high quality of knowledge, which is not checked, and so on. So we try to face this challenge with our 10 Stages app and show that we, in this small tool, which actually is not that small if you think about the whole process, how it was created and how many materials we had to prepare for that. But what the users are seeing on the screen is small portion of knowledge, but it was selected knowledge. And that was a big challenge for us as a team to choose what is the most important, what is the most accurate for each stage, to present it correctly, but also to make it accessible also on this emotional and mental level for the users, because we knew that we have diverse audience, students, teachers, people from different countries, coming from different backgrounds, minorities, and so on. So we had to balance the content as well. So I think this is also a challenge for the teachers to balance the content they are showing to the students. And since I'm working with many teachers and I'm observing different educational activities in different schools, not only in Poland, that you still can see some, I would say, questionable activities. Today, not so many teachers follow anymore like the drama idea, to use the drama at school as an activity if you are not professional in that, if you don't know how to really prepare the students for this activity and how to close it. You cannot just leave it, but some people are still doing that. One of the challenges is also the update of knowledge, because I know that for many people, history is, a history, is a closed chapter. It happened and we are far away from that. But we still have research, and every day we're discovering something new. Every day there are some updates. And some people don't follow that, and they are just repeating the old, let's say, old knowledge they have, using the old notes, and they don't formulate this content in the way that the young people can absorb the knowledge out of that. And I think this is a big challenge. And what is a challenge, thinking about the students, because it was mentioned already by Monika and Tomek that we are talking about processes, we are talking about the stages. And for many students, it's some abstract idea. We are talking about mechanism, and what means a mechanism. For them, it's something really out of nowhere. And in the app, we are presenting this mechanism through the biographies, and it's exactly step by step. So they can follow that not as an abstract idea, but to see how on every step things are changing slowly, step by step. It's not recognizable if you are not really focused on that. And from the outside, maybe you don't see that. But if you follow the description, you can see how it's changing. And this is something what can be useful also in the classroom, but also for the youngsters when they facing the daily life challenges, because this is what we also included in the app, since we are presenting biographies of really diverse people. So I think these are the biggest challenges I see. There are many, many more, of course, but you know how it is in education. If you open one box, you have 5 others inside, and you need to open another. And when you start talking with the teachers, you start with one topic, and they present you 5 others. And this is like never-ending story in education. And I think this is also the power of education, because we can develop ourselves, and we can develop the tools, we can develop the knowledge, the projects we present. So I think this is a challenge, but also in this positive way that we can do something good in the end.
Thank you, Larysa. I think that's a very important point that you made, that technology, which we associate, like new technology, we associate with, future modernism, etc., can be actually very helpful to study the past, the history. And Tomek mentioned and encouraged everyone to open the app, and I would encourage you to do it now as well, and to turn to the 10th stage, where we discuss denial. And Tomek, I would like to ask you if you could give us a brief explanation of what this stage stands for, how it connects to the previous stages. You already mentioned the the initial 3, but there are also other stages. So how does the last stage connects with the previous 9 stages, and why understanding it so crucial for taking action? So that would be the first part of my question to you. And then I would like to talk a little bit more about the Gregory Stanton's framework. But let's start with the denial stage.
Thank you very much. Let me scroll to the end of the app so that I updated as well. The last stage, denial, in the Stanton's theory, is actually very accommodative. It also might be the longest of the stages in the entire cycle. And I'm working very hard also in order to prove that this is the stage that is making the entire theory cyclical, that is making the entire theory kind of self-repeating again from the very beginning. What is the denial about? Denial is about the perpetrators using all of their might, skills, and tools to cover up, to destroy, to intimidate the eyewitnesses, to murder the eyewitnesses, to eliminate any physical evidence of the crimes being committed, and to destroy any survivors that might be there. And this destruction is not only a physical destruction, it might be a mental destruction, creating a situation in which there's no way to communicate what have happened, creating a situation in which there's no global interest to learn what have happened. We can talk for a long time that maybe we have a situation in which the same level of global indifference that leads into a genocide to happen in a certain place, because yes, it's global human indifference, which is a factor needed for the genocide to happen. Maybe the same indifference actually continues globally after the genocide has happened and intimidates those who survive from sharing, from speaking, from trying to communicate in the reality in which they have no means, no tools, no language. They are usually refugees themselves, landing in a third different country. They have to learn a language from square one. They have to roll up their sleeves and provide for their families. This is not a situation in which you can start to unfold your story of Auschwitz. So that's also denial, in which we, as people living out there, are actually not creating space for those who have survived to release their emotions, to release their testimony, to build some kind of a historical context in which they will feel secure to talk. Frankly, of course, it happened differently in Poland and in the so-called West. In Poland, the awareness of the camps was being built pretty much from day one upon liberation, and Auschwitz Museum has become a museum in 1947 after a long debate. But when you look into Western Europe or America, the global awareness of the Holocaust is being built only beginning in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. The awareness we, let's say, operate today with and the education that we have was constructed somewhere in the 80s and 90s. It's very recent, it's very fresh. So only in the 80s and 90s, most of the survivors that emigrated out of Central Europe felt comfortable and felt that there is enough of contextual knowledge into which they can release what they've survived. Just to give you a good example, two examples. The first scientific book on Auschwitz, written in English, was only published in early 90s, in 1993. So that's the level of misunderstanding or lack of understanding of this place. Of course, there are a couple of reasons for that, or more than a couple, no place and time here. I was shocked this September. I was working with a dear friend of mine for whom I was doing research for 10 years already in different periods and different family members. Her mom, a Polish Christian, was actually imprisoned on the streets of Warsaw, was caught on the streets of Warsaw just for changing US dollars in late of 1942, and almost immediately deported to Auschwitz. She survived 2 years. She married with a Jewish survivor after the war. Cutting the long story short, she landed in New York in the 50s, and she has little kids, and she has a depression. And some American friends are suggesting her, go to a psychologist, see a shrink. You will just unload what happened to you and things will be good. So she did, with hesitation. And the story is she entered into the psychologist's office, who was, of course, kind of an educated and rounded up person who knew history. And she started to speak a little bit of Auschwitz and her experience in Auschwitz. And the response of a psychologist was fascinating. The psychologist has said, after listening to part of the story, that she's hallucinating, that it could not have happened to a human being, that it's absolutely impossible. And the only option in this situation is to have this person completely drugged up. So that was the response of the external world. And actually, this is also the denial in which we are not able to cope with the reality of what has happened. To give a more contemporary example, we are in denial of the fact that there's a war happening in Ukraine. Yes, we've reached to the point in which we are actually no longer interested. We pushed it to the background of our lives. And we are starting to listen to the denial promoted by certain politicians who are trying to convince us that there's nothing happening there, which is worth of our interest.
I had shivers down my spine when you mentioned the story, the New York story of a shrink and hallucinations. We mentioned that we keep mentioning that Professor Gregory Stanton's framing is the basis of the app. But you are an inquisitive academic yourself. So I wanted to ask you if you think that Gregory Stanton's frame fully explains the patterns leading to a genocide, or maybe there is something still missing in those puzzles.
Well, the theory is good as long as other scholars are starting to think about it and take it apart and try to negate it and try to talk to one another and just test it. Gregory Stanton's theory is one of the few, let's say, coherent theories that are there, which is also interesting that science up until now was not interested in developing this theory. There's a little bit of theory similar in the psychology, but there's a huge field that needs to be taken care of, in my opinion. Stanton's theory is good, but it's hard to call it scientific because it's not an open theory which is actually open to scientific criticism. And it's not even published and described in any kind of scientific journals. So it's very hard to relate to it as a scientist. Yeah. But of course, we accepted it because it's the one that is the most popular. And we were, way before the app was created, in different projects with Monika and you, we were actually using it. Yeah? And we knew that it worked on students. And this is exactly what we were effect driven at that moment. When it comes to adding something to the theory, of course, there's a lot of places in between that we can debate about one another stage and how it goes from one to another. But I would add and develop specifically the last stage, so the denial. I'm of a strong opinion that beyond denial, there is a stage called silence. That there is a stage in which we are all falling into a silence, which is a function of what I've just said 10 minutes ago. And this silence is actually a stage which is making this theory not a linear one, as Stanton is creating and showing it, but a circular one. It's becoming a vicious circle into which humanity collapses again and again. And I think the responsibility on us and the responsibility on the users of this app is to find a way out of this vicious circle, at which stage you can act strong enough and what to do in order to actually kick the society out of the next cycle. So I highly encourage young scientists or even students to actually think when they use this app and to think creatively about how those stages are interrelated, how we sometimes ourselves in our lives apply those categories and how far we take them. What are the breaking points for us? So where are we stepping back from applying those categories against other people? That's an interesting test that everybody can do. So I believe that there is silence and that this silence needs to be challenged, because maybe in challenging the silence, we'll be preventing another genocide from happening. Last thing to say in this part, talking about silence. So the story I just shared about hallucinations supposedly of this woman who survived 2 years of Birkenau. A month later, in October, I was working with a lady who I saw for the first time in my lifetime. Her father was in Auschwitz for about 1 year. He was a Jewish prisoner. And he also, and I actually shared with her the story of a visit of a shrink in New York. And I could see that her eyes sparked. And she said, with a reservation, but she said, listen, my father in the 50s also was desperately looking for help of a psychologist somewhere. And the only thing that they were actually offering him, seriously offering, was lobotomy. They were seriously offering him a lobotomy on his brain as a cure to what his brain is coping with as a result of being an inmate of Auschwitz. I mean, in today's framework, it's unbelievable. But yes, when you think about psychology or psychiatry in the 40s and 50s, unfortunately, it was possible.
I think that's very potent what you said about the stages framing being like a cycle that can repeat itself, rather than something like, it's not the end of history in a way, right? It's not the beginning and the end. If it were, then never again would hold true, but it doesn't, unfortunately. And Monika, from your perspective as someone working closely with and mentoring activists as well as educators in non-formal education, which of the stages from that perspective would you consider especially challenging to address in civic and educational work today? Would you say that the same 3 stages that Tomek mentioned before, or maybe some other stages?
Well, all the stages posed several challenges. But let me maybe connect a little bit to what Tomek said about the fact that psychologists were missing the terms, the language, and the understanding what actually Holocaust survivors experienced. And it is a fascinating aspect, and I encourage all of you to read the book of Professor Bilewicz, who talks about how psychology developed a PTSD syndrome and other approaches to help people to process such traumatic events in their lives. But coming back to my discipline, human rights and civic education, I could say that for me, the most powerful and at the same time most neglected moment for education is before things become extreme. So I'm talking about prevention. It starts with the smallest signals, language, jokes, stereotypes, everyday microaggressions or exclusions. And this is exactly why people ignore most of them, because it feels a little too early, too mild, too uncomfortable to react to. And actually, this is the moment where civic and human rights education can still genuinely change the direction of what might come. Once we enter later stages like preparation or extermination, the challenge for education shifts completely. So these are the moments that are emotionally overwhelming for both for learners, for educators, but also for communities, because this is the moment where a variety of emotions come to play: shock, fear, anger, grief, all interconnected. And all those emotions matter in educational setting, because without them, there wouldn't be chance for real engagement. But at the same time, the emotions are not the goal of human rights education. So they can be treated as a bridge from understanding to responsibility, and from responsibility to action. So bridging all these emotions, especially in situations where people process them in a different way, is really hard educational work. That's why people who lead such workshops have to stay deeply attentive, careful, with empathy, and deeply to deeply connect with these emotions. But if your question is which stage is particularly challenging, so I would say that in the current context, with the current political situation, it would be denial. As you, Tomek, elaborated, is less loud or brutal. It's refined. It hides behind, some reasonable doubts, or shifts responsibility, attacks credibility or witnesses. So on the surface, it can sound rational, but in reality, it slowly dissolves truth, memory, and accountability. So it is really troubling to see how this kind of denial rarely is approached in clear legal categories and consequences to people who exercise this kind of speech. even though in many contexts it really touches the boundaries of allowed lawful speech and historical falsification. But this is exactly why in our work at Humanity in Action and in our app in particular, the focus is not only on reacting to denial, but first and foremost on prevention. On helping our users, learners to recognize the earliest, most subtle warning signs in their, like their learning environments or in everyday realities, on social media, at school, at work, at family tables. Of course, we are aware that we cannot turn anyone into an expert overnight, but actually our goal is to give people some levels of awareness, some language, and some confidence and motivation to question, to also pause, reflect, and respond before things escalate. So from the perspective of human rights education, I genuinely think that there is no more essential skill than this one.
Thank you, Monika. And I would direct my next question to Larysa, to you, because when working with teachers, some say they struggle with very practical issues around the 10 stages of denial, as Monika mentioned. And for example, students encounter misinformation, conspiracy narratives in their daily media environment, etc. So Larysa, from your perspective as someone who works with teachers, also in the formal settings, what practical strategies does the application, 10 Stages app, offer to help those teachers address these, difficult situations in the very classroom?
This is a very big challenge today because, as Monika mentioned, what we can see on the political scene also, it's something what attracts in a bad way, I would say, the young people. And we can see, I see that it changed within last years, that the classes are really polarized. And we have very often now two groups in the classroom. I would say left and right, or oriented left and right. More radical than it was a few years ago. It's more visible. And the teachers are also saying that. And from my interactions, conversations with the teachers, I know that they feel overwhelmed. They feel sometimes powerless because they have the feeling that they are representing, I would say, the old school. And they cannot compete with the social media, with all the TikTok videos, all the memes, virals, and so on. This is something what is out of their kind of bubble. It's beyond them. And they feel really lost sometimes. And they cannot catch the problem because they know there is a problem. Sometimes is under the surface, that it's not addressed really in the classroom, but you can feel that there is a tension even within the students. Sometimes they are bringing to the class some conspiracy theories or some, I would say, new prejudices. And this is something what very often is difficult for the teachers to reconstruct, to put, to open this topic and show the students that there are different elements which create this problem. This is something what they can, take a closer look at. And I think that the power and the value of our 10 Stages app is also the fact that but thanks to the audience, had chosen really diverse stories. And very often young people claim that they want to live in a diverse world, that they want that all the voices are heard. And this is what we did in the app, because we have representatives of different minorities there. During the testing phase, we got the information from the students who were testing, especially from the female part of the testers, that they appreciated a lot that we included so many female voices in this app, that this is not only one-sided history as they see very often in the school books, that this is a man's story, but we have what is, I would say, very popular today, her story, that we also included that. So the teachers can use different examples, different peoples from different minorities, but different countries also, to show that these prejudices, that radicalization, that discrimination is a problem of very different people. It's not only a problem of Jews, LGBTIQ people, people with disabilities, but this is something what can touch everyone. And this also underlines how diverse is the society also today. And I think that something what can help also the teachers is the fact that we are presenting very local stories and also the stories of normal, average people, because I have the feeling that very often students try to distance themselves of this, heroes, because they are kind of tired of listening about it. That's why it's so easy to absorb some conspiracy theories, is because it explains the world really easy. And this app presents really different stories, what can be used in different contexts in the classroom, and also might give the teachers the feeling that they have this resource, and this is something what they have in their hand, that this is not something what they need to kind of check, produce, and so on, but this is something what is ready to use, and they might feel a bit safer having that, because it also has this different form. Is not a book, is not the the old school material. This is something what is newly, if I can say newly, after 5 years created, but it still has the shape of something what is closer to the young people than just archive, even if we included so many archival materials inside. So I think this is kind of a power of this app also, that it includes different resources which can help to deconstruct different theories.
Mm-hmm. And when you mention different resources, I should stress that Humanity in Action Poland also produces additional educational materials. Larysa, you have been also engaged in producing various materials of that kind, like workshop scenarios, various historical games, etc. So I'm curious, can you give us some concrete examples of how you have seen some of the teachers that you've been cooperating with use those various materials, ready-made materials that can be adapted in their classrooms in practice?
Yeah, one of the teachers who is definitely doing that is a person who decided to be a patron of this project. So Babka od Histy, it's great to hear that she is still using the materials we produce, and she still tries to encourage the other teachers to do it. She presented once the way how to create kind of business cards of some biographies, to choose some stories and to create like personal card of this person, and to explain why it's important, for example, in this community and so on. I know that some teachers, because of the support of different teams in different countries, we have 3 language versions of this app. So some teachers were using it during the school exchanges. So it's a tool which is accessible for students using different languages, I mean, English, German, and Polish. But if you have international group and you have some historical project, it's way easier to use the English version, and to kind of organize the workshop for all the students, and no one is feeling excluded. And the last thing maybe I will mention, because I know that the time is running out, is that as I mentioned, we created the app based on very local stories. And it also gives the feeling, and I would say this, the power for the local communities to present their own story, that they might feel that this is also important. We are not only repeating the stories of several persons, like, I don't know, Janusz Korczak, Irena Sendlerova, etc., that we have just 5-10 names and we are just repeating them. But in many towns, villages, regions, we can find also some role models, some people whose stories are incredible, but maybe the stories are not known. So this is the moment when the local communities, the teachers, with the schools, with the students, can do something to kind of promote these stories and to maybe show that they have something or someone that they can be proud of in this context of these difficult but important stories. So I think this is also the way how the teachers can use this app and the materials we have on the website, because as Monika mentioned, we created also the website because there was a need. And on the website, we present more stories than in the app. So this is the moment to advertise maybe that if you have some story and you would like to include it, you would like to have it on our website, we are more than happy to work with you and to create sub-page for your story.
Absolutely. For your story, for the region you're from town, village, etc. And continuing this trope of trying to merge the historical materials and the, as Larysa said, kind of old school of learning about history with this more modern, with the use of the app. Tomek, you as a historian and educator, you work directly with sites of memory, also as a guide, as I mentioned before. So how do you see the 10 Stages app complementing those more traditional forms of historical learning? What possibilities does it open for deepening visitors' understanding of, for instance, contemporary risks?
Thank you. Thank you, Larysa, very much for mentioning the lack of role models right now, and teachers and students feeling sometimes lost about what do we follow, especially in this confusion of social media. I think actually our app is providing 10 very constructive and I would say positivist role models. People who are using these skills and people who are using the education to be very proactive in an impossible situation. And they deliver. They make a difference. And that's why we decided to talk about those specific personalities. And they are very good role models. And I think they are very contemporary in our little struggles, even in social media sometimes. We can learn something from those people, how they were processing the reality around them in the 40s. Another thing which is important about the app, well, we were having a lot of thinking processes and intentions behind the app. One of the intentions was to make a universal tool that can be actually used for a group of students who is about to visit an actual memorial site, who is about to visit a site like Auschwitz. So you are 15, 16, you have been taken into one of those compulsory or not visits into one of those places. And frankly, with all of the balagan and mess in school and all of other subjects, there's little space for teacher to sit down with students and to prepare them properly into this visit. And I know that it shall happen, but it almost never happens. So the students have been just diving into Auschwitz, and in most cases, they are completely unprepared. This app is meant within the first 3-4 stages to offer actually a good classroom work opportunity on places, people, and stages, which might be a wonderful preparation into the visit. The middle stages, stage number 6, 7, 8, might be actually a stage that you educate or focus for a second, even on the bus when you drive to Auschwitz. I mean, it's in your pocket. You can read briefly the story of Rosa Robota, and you can get familiar with the outlay of Birkenau, or you can get familiar with certain imagery of films that are there, which are trying to make you understand the circumstances of Auschwitz better. And then the last stage, mostly denial and silence, are actually given very good talking points into a possible evaluation of such visit. So there's not much time that is demanded from a teacher. You can spend one class before the visit to go through 2 or 3 stages and let the students to go through 2 or 3 more stages on their own. Then you do the visit of the site, and then you use the last stage very practically in the classroom to talk about silences, about denial, about what do we deny, who is denying things who is denying reality for us today. And that was the intention, and I see it works, because this is how I'm sometimes using this app. And especially for students today, but pretty much human beings always, seeing is believing. And using this app, you can actually see not only life characters and role models, but also places that you will be physically exploring during a trip like this. So as a preparation to a visit, it works very good. And like what Larysa mentioned, the real power of the app, which I'm using very often, is the fact that it's showing in 3 languages. So if you have a mixed group, if you have an international seminar, you can actually make all of the students to be on the same page when they are processing history or later on evaluating it after the visit. So that's a great feature of the app itself.
And I would add that it also the materials are presented in an interactive way, as well as they accommodate various, let's say, learning styles. Because as Tomek mentioned, there's a lot to see, but there are also recordings which are embedded in the application. So for those of you who are more into listening, there are also recordings of important content. And Monika, we are almost finished with our webinar, but as the name of our organization states, there needs to be an element of action. So my question would be, we would regard a call to action. If you were to share, let's say, 3 do's that educators and activists could follow, what competences should they develop to work effectively for human rights in ways informed by historical knowledge, and how can humanity in action support them in that?
Only 3?
Only 3. I'm sorry.
There are quite many, but I am looking at the clock, and I'll try to be
Let's say
brief.
top 3, okay? Top 3.
Okay, let's do this way. So for me, one of the most important approaches is to have the courage to make things uncomfortable. So it's about, it's not that much about method or a tool. It's about an inner stance, to have the courage to ask difficult, unsettling questions, and really not to deliver ready-made answers, to let people think about their own answers and accommodate to sometimes high emotional tension. But it is so important, because in that moment, actually, learning begins. So the second one would be to create spaces where people feel safe enough to speak freely and in an honest way what they think about. So both are connected, because this unsettling, tough questions have to happen in a space where people don't shut down, but they they are eager to express uncertainty, their emotions, fear, anger, shame, disagreement. And what is important is that a person who leads such dialogues is able to handle these emotions without escalating them, but also without shutting people down. So, of course, it requires some level of emotional intelligence and the ability to listen deeply to other people and to be trauma informed and have this level of sensitivity. The third would be something that I mentioned briefly or already. So it's about staying in dialogue, even if the discussion becomes difficult. Because as we all know, memory work almost always produces some sort of conflict. So the role of an educator or activist is not to eliminate this, but to actually to facilitate dialogue and keep people in conversations when it feels even uncomfortable. So this would be my top three. You also asked about competencies, and of course, this list can be long. But with the first one, I will not be original. It's all about critical thinking and media literacy. It's really about being able to ask the questions: who tells the story, whose voice is missing, what interests does this given narrative serve? Because without these competencies, memory becomes easy to manipulate, especially in times of propaganda like before or disinformation nowadays. Another one would be adopting inclusive and intersectional lens, so that memory does not some groups like women, people with disabilities, minorities, or people on the socio-economic margins are not erased from the mainstream narrative, as they were historically pushed aside. So another one, it's about learning and unlearning at the same time. We all inherited certain narratives, but at the same time, we all have our own blind spots. We are in positions of privilege, and we also take some thoughts as certainties, and be able to question them is also, something which is crucial in the learning process. Another one would be about leading by example. Larysa, you mentioned this lack of role models, and I know it's tough, but young people are watching us while we are leading various workshops. So they observe how one reacts to controversy, to pressure, to uncertainty, and whether somebody is avoiding difficult topics or maybe is able to face them honestly, and this builds trust, this sort of authenticity. My final one, and this is where we sometimes disagree, but this is my subjective selection. So I think that educational work cannot be built only on trauma and harm. It has to require some sort of hope. Of course, not hope as an additional component, that it is not integrated with all the content we try to convey. But this is about ability to show examples of solidarity, of courage, of change. because without hope, people disconnect. And we actually, for human rights work, for helping them to become active citizens, we don't want them to be disconnected from reality. And well, I believe that, this set of competencies, or this set of do's or, by contrast, don'ts, create a fabric of humanity in action work, not only in Poland, but also in other countries, in Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the US. We create learning spaces where people can practice, exercise critical thinking, practice dialogue, but also share discomfort and still feel included into the collaborative learning setting. This is also the place where, by connecting historical memory and present day challenging, human rights challenging, we support them in developing knowledge, but also in community, we empower them to act, even if, it is the answers and the direction is not that easy. Because we believe that actually silence and denial do not survive only through propaganda. They survive when curiosity, simple curiosity and open mind fades, when questions stop being asked, and when we lose actually courage to change things.
Thank you, Monika, very much. And thank you, Tomek and Larysa and Monika, you again. Thank you all for your impressive work and the impact that you make, as well as for today's webinar. And this webinar series has now come to a close, but the recordings, along with educational scenarios for workshops focused on women, migrants, and people with disabilities, are available on our Humanity in Action website. And of course, and it was mentioned many times today, we really encourage you to make good use of the 10 Stages educational app in 3 languages for free. And please also visit our website 10kroków.org. Thank you very much, everyone.